Good people, what's up? What's good? You guys are listening to your favorite podcast, Connecting the Dots. It's your boy, Caleb Smith.
And I'm Kimmy Coco.
And today we have a very special guest, Mr. Justin Blu, Mr. 60 Seconds Ain't Enough.
Yes!
60 seconds ain't enough, so later today, about to get it in.
Yes, sir.
Get into these topics.
Most definitely.
Looking
so
forward
excited.
to it.
Thank you,
We
man.
need some
Thank you for coming
applause,
through.
y'all. Wait.
Yes. Thank you.
There we go.
Shout out to everybody in the
We got
live
a
audience as
live
well.
audience. If
Shout
y'all
out to
ever want to
everybody.
come down, just hit us up and let us know. We will open the door and
Most
let you
definitely.
in. And you get
Yeah.
to talk on the mic and give your opinion. Because I think they say an opinion of one person represents some thousand of people. So
Okay. Yeah.
everybody's opinion counts.
Learn from somebody.
You can learn from everybody.
Yeah, you
Yes.
can learn from
In
anybody.
the Bible, they use the bush. So
Yeah, that's facts. These past 2 weeks has been crazy. It's been so much in the news. I remember just talking on the phone with, the whole team on Thursday, and we were
Yeah.
like, these past 2 weeks has been like the craziest week in news. Like, we had so much going on, and I just thought it was just perfect timing that Justin's coming through. We can get your
Yes,
perspective on this. So
because 60 seconds truly is not enough.
not
and we
enough.
love to hear. I love to hear when you pop up. I'm just like, I just love to hear what
It's
you
a
have
breath
to
of
say.
fresh air.
It's a
Yeah.
breath of fresh
Thank
air
you.
to have
Yep.
somebody out there that does that. And every time somebody that does that uses their voice for something positive to teach, encourage, or anything like that, I always have to give them their props. Because, in this day and age, if you have a platform, you can use it for anything
That's facts.
negative or anything to push people away from knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and you run right toward it.
Thank you.
Make people watch it and listen
Yeah.
to it.
I appreciate y'all on your platform too. So
Thank you,
Thank
man.
you.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
all
you.
respect all around.
We got to hook you up with some merch, too, the Innovative Black as
Let's
well.
get it.
So make that
Yeah,
happen.
yeah.
But on the Real World, I watch that all the time. Me and my girlfriend said we used to tune in every week on Thursday. Watched it last night, matter of fact. And we just love seeing you. And I remember Kim, she was expressing the same sentiment. Just seeing somebody that was unapologetic, somebody that was raw, telling people the truth, even if you felt like you were the only dude talking.
Right.
And, just seeing how you were talking to Tova, whoever, and just seeing how you had the ability to change people's minds. And I know probably you can't go in depth about everything, but how was that experience walking in there and realizing, hey, I might be the only conscious person in the building? Like, how did that affect you somewhat?
I kind of figured that going in. Just those types of shows and just the types of people who tend to be selected and things. I figured that going in. And it was a tough decision on whether or not I would actually do the show because entertainment isn't necessarily a realm that I've cared to go into, but I just understand everything is a vehicle.
Facts.
Everything is a platform, and it's just about using vehicles in certain ways. And I think when the announcement came out that I was going to be on the show, a lot of people were kind of like skeptical, like, okay,
Is he selling us out?
I don't know, like, is he gonna be on there wilding, like what's
Yeah.
up, right?
Right.
It's all in my comment section, and you got people like, oh, he done sold out. I'm thinking like, you don't even know what occurred, or you don't even know what was done, and so that's a lesson to people as well, is
Right.
not to jump the gun on our opinions on certain things
Very true.
without seeing how things play out. So.
Right.
If you just hear the show, you're just okay. He's gonna be on there partying, going crazy, representing us a bad way. But if you go and watch, you're like, wow, we needed this. Like, we've never seen this before. This gave us voice. So that was one of my goals, to give us voice. And we always complain about not having positive black people.
There you go.
In
Yeah.
mainstream media.
Yeah.
And so when I had that opportunity, I took it for that reason. If we're gonna complain about not having positive black people in mainstream media, if there's an opportunity to do so, and it's not going to be detrimental to us, and it can actually progress us, then I'm going to take those opportunities.
I love that. It's all about representation too. So that was perfect. And I remember one of the lines, I think you told Tova about your white tears. I think they don't bother me. And hearing that, it was funny, but I felt you.
Yeah.
Because and I know Kim's laughing because Kim is the same way. Like, she be telling people, I don't care. And I love that because that's that true, to me, warrior spirit. Because we were talking about that at the panel last week about police brutality. And one of the men was saying how we don't have those real men sometimes, unapologetic about things. So how was that for you?
All right, well, I'll say this. It's hard to be unapologetic when you're still depending on white people to put food on your plate.
Right.
And so
That's facts.
You have to, you have to
Play the game sometimes.
I mean, it's really
Yeah.
not a game. It's just that you don't have to put all your cards out there, and that's what I like about you, because I can see.
He could blend
when
in
he's-
certain times.
No, it's not even like, it's just
Yeah.
he know. It's like you don't have to speak everything you know. It's kind of like that. Like, it's an unspoken thing. Like, when you see him on the show and he's just like, you know how your mom gives you that look, or somebody that you are real good friends with, and y'all got like a private joke. It's just like an insider for all black people. That's what he represents to me on the show. Like something will be going on, and he'll just be like,
it's everything is very intentional. Yeah. Everything is very intentional, and so I'll leave it at that. Like everything's very intentional. Just you know, where I carry myself, where I go about handling certain situations, very intentional. So
my favorite, and you know that when you are on these reality shows, you know it's kind of like you give yourself up, because they can at that point edit or clip or take sound bites of you and put you out there in a way that they want you to be out there. And he hasn't given them the opportunity to do that at all.
Right.
You're never going to get confused as to who he is or where he stands, because he's just unapologetically that way. So when they put out that clip of him, then the one I posted on our page, when they, you know, posted that clip of him, and he's just like in the car
chilling,
and they're he's just like, you're not gonna shake me, like you know, you don't have to be like that. Why are you being like this? Like it's so obvious to us in everyday life. But reality shows have made that so normal, and I was always so afraid of them normalizing bad behavior. It's not cute. It's never sexy. It doesn't make you any better. It doesn't make you right because you're loud.
Facts.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like it goes back to what we know and how we work every day, right? Because who out here even sees anybody act like they act on reality shows, dress like they dress on reality shows? No one is out here with 7 bundles of hair and a fully beat
just
face
to go get some
every
coffee.
day, just to be down the street to have a meet up with the girl that you had an argument. Like that's not real life. Like be for real.
I wanted to make sure I just portrayed myself as real as possible. And for me, there's so many serious things that are going on. You know, black people are scared to walk outside and they're afraid of getting shot in our own neighborhoods, struggling to pay our bills. A lot of us are scared of losing our jobs any given day. So to me, just as far as a lifestyle, I only give energy to things that are important. And so one thing I'll say is, especially for black Americans, we should travel outside the country. And if you get an opportunity, even travel to like third world countries and see how things are. About a year ago, I got an opportunity to travel to Haiti.
Wow.
And so we talk about the hood, we talk about the projects, we talk about how bad it is over here, especially in our music. We talk about the struggle. And yes, we are struggling. But in comparison to these other countries, in comparison to these other situations, it's nothing. And so when you are able to gain that perspective on, even in the midst of our struggles over here in America, we're still blessed. It's like there's stuff that we need to change, there's stuff that we need to focus on progressing. But at the same time, I don't have time to fight about small things. When
it's not small to them. It depends on your perspective.
It's definitely perspective.
So if you have the reason that you travel is so that you'll have a global perspective.
Facts.
That's
and
right.
once you have a global perspective, and that's what I try to explain to people all the time. Your perspective is, you know, the ratio is like your world to, you know, it's very small.
Yeah.
So our experience as African Americans or Black Americans or people of color or whatever they're calling it in this century, you know what I mean? We have a unique experience, you know? And so we just have to, go ahead.
You're diving into something very important, and something that Malcolm X made an effort to point out is that for African Americans or Black Americans, a lot of times we view ourselves as being minorities because we're thinking about our numbers on just the American stage. And he said, but when you start looking at your numbers on a world stage or international stage, you realize how powerful you are. And so we're not minorities at all.
No.
It's just we're looking at it from a small angle of the bigger picture.
Right.
And that's just because we've been trained so much to just think of America being the entire planet.
That was by design.
Yep.
Because when we came over here, you know, the erasing of our history beyond when we got here, you know, that was done on purpose. And that's why I say you represent a greater good for us as Black Americans in your generation. I don't know. Can I ask you how old you are? Do you want people to know? Because
26.
See?
Millennial. You got to start giving us our credit, Kim.
I don't.
They don't want to give millennials the credit. We deserve credit. Wait, all right, I'm gonna go on slight rant.
Well, that would be credit for Generation X for raising a millennial. Right?
Go on your rant.
Millennials deserve way more credit. Why? Because millennials are refusing to take what's been handed to us.
Right.
And so for the other generations, it's been, you work 30, 40 years.
Right.
And then you get a couple years off and then you pass away.
Yeah.
And so for generational type of generations, people
You're not taking that.
The millennials in general are saying no. And so, like, it used to be crazy for somebody. It used to look bad on your resume to have a different job every 2 years or every year and a half. But now there's understanding in that that's just not how it works anymore. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to like the work-life balance, people are demanding to actually have a life outside of work. And so I respect the generations that came before the millennials because it was different situations. I mean, we have the internet now, which is a
great help.
Great game changer. We have more freelancers than ever in the history of mankind.
Because you have the tools.
Yes, and and there's less barriers to get to those tools, and so so we have more different opportunities in that sense. And I respect the generations that came before because people had to do what they had to do.
And because of that, I give you guys a huge responsibility. Not only because you guys are going to take care of the generations ahead of you, but because it's so easy. I don't take a lot of excuses. Mm-hmm. So,
and rightfully so.
For you not to know things, for me, is a problem because it's so easy for you to find out. Like I tell my nieces and my daughter and like people that are your age and younger, when I needed to get a job, I had to like go to the newspaper. Like back in the day when I my first jobs. Yeah. I had to go to the newspaper, to the job section, and
probably
you
had
to
physically
like, find the
go
place.
there
You had to go to
right?
get a fax number, and like fax it, and then like call them, and you know what I'm saying?
Follow up.
I mean, now there's just like people have made businesses out of helping you find a job. People, it's just so easy. So there's like no excuse.
Facts.
And even though we talk all the time about going to college or not going to college, what should you do as far as like financially, and you don't even really have to go anymore. I mean, we did. Mm-hmm. The people before us did. Mm-hmm. But now, what do you say, sir?
I'd just like to talk about the whole millennials thing because...
Are you a millennial?
I am a millennial.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are millennials. I think we should also check.
They don't even know it. Yeah.
The age it's a lot bigger than most people think.
That's a fact.
But to the point of it being easier, I completely agree. But it's also easier for everybody.
Absolutely.
Population has also changed significantly, global population. So these numbers kind of even themselves out. That conversation, I think, is the same conversation against whether it's black on black dating, black on black business. It's you did it when it's really like it's kind of more of a we did it type of thing. Yeah. So like I just think the number of if 5 people were looking through a newspaper and 150 people are looking on a website, we're kind of
neck and neck.
So I just think that's an important part to kind of throw into the conversation.
No, it makes a point. Just in you speaking, I thought about it as everybody's running faster, but everybody's running faster. So you're in a similar race.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, I mean, I didn't mean to cut you off, but there's opportunities though. I'll still say it's easier in the sense of like I can send an email to Japan and I can FaceTime with somebody across the world and it's easier to maneuver in that way.
Absolutely, and that's more so my point. It's easier, but it's easier for everybody. So with the opportunities, like you said, you can communicate with somebody in Japan years before. You have to get on a plane, figure out how to get a meeting, shake hands, all that stuff. There wasn't even a LinkedIn. You're literally just going to Japan and figuring out from the day you get off the plane. Yeah. Those days are over. Yeah. But those are the same opportunities for every single human being with internet access.
All right, so this is very important to say. Okay, so basically we're getting to a place where the playing field is becoming level, and it's coming down to just the work ethic. And so it's coming down to work ethic, and it's coming down to intellectual property. And so I took a trip to Alabama a couple days ago, and on there you see all the land that's been acquired. And so for black people to buy that amount of land back the right way it's not impossible, but it's like that's an extremely uphill battle, no pun intended. But we've always been the innovators. We've always been the creatives. We've always been the ones that setting the trends, the ones that's having that intellectual property. And so now we're in an age where, okay, now don't get me wrong, it's very important for us to focus on buying land, but to get those great masses of land, it's a lot harder for us because we're not stealing it and we're not enslaving people to do so. So
it's gonna take time.
Right, but in this intellectual age, we're the ones that are the thinkers, and so we just got to continue to capitalize on that.
Innovate.
Right, and it's at a place where it's about work ethic, and who has a higher work ethic than black people?
Nobody.
So if we just hone in on that and continue to like maintain ownership of our stuff, we're gonna progress in this age.
Okay.
I like that.
This week, something went on that we talked about a week before, and I just wanted to bring it up really quickly. Caleb wanted to talk about this a couple weeks ago. He kind of brought it up. I mean, we all bring our topics to the table, and we discuss them. And this is one that Caleb brought up, and I kind of was just like, oh, forget him. But
let's see what it is.
Now it's like, yo, the dude actually off himself allegedly. So I'm like, maybe we need to really kind of talk about this again and figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
So Jeffrey Epstein.
That's what it is. Okay.
He's a financier. We talked about this briefly before, right?
We did.
We just said that he got arrested for sex trafficking of children, right? So he's a financier, and that is someone that has money. And they give it to people, they invest in their
Sounds
businesses.
very broad.
It's broad.
Yeah.
I kind of read a little bit more about him when you said you brought it up, and I was just like, okay, so what's going on? Why are all these conspiracy theories floating around? So he basically was just, he was brought up in Brooklyn. He kind of like finessed his way through.
That's the perfect word to use.
Yeah, I mean, I have no other word for that. He went to school. He went to a couple great colleges, so he got to rub elbows with some great people. And finesse. That's all you need to do is get in the room. If you don't know how to finesse, the school of finesse is you just get around the right people and work your
Foot in
magic.
the door. Yep.
So he went to some great schools. He's been around some great people. He finessed his way into, I want to say, Goldman Sachs, which is a big bank. There were several banks back in 2008 that were involved in the whole collapse of the financial industry in this country, and that was one of them. So there's that. But, he got to the point that he was at to, be around politicians and people in power. There was the head of Victoria's Secret. There was Prince Charles's brother, Andrew. There was, a whole bunch of people that hung out with him, including the man that runs this country right now,
Bill Clinton. Yeah.
So recently, this weekend, after he got found out that Trump, that video went around. Anybody see that video that went around like a week ago? And Trump and Jeffrey Epstein are at this party and they're checking out the chicks, and they.
Oh, and Kim, mind you, that's how he met his wife as well.
That's how he met his wife through.
That's very important
through
to know.
Some escort service, whatever they had going on. So this guy finessed his way up to the top, so he gets he gets to be in the position that he's at, and he does some child sex trafficking. That's just making the long story short. I mean, you can read about it. There's very detailed information about him out there because, this is not something new. This guy's been finessing his way around for decades. He got arrested. No, he didn't get arrested. He got found out back in the 80s that he was involved in some sort of like Ponzi type scheme. Nobody did shit about it. So he's been getting over on people for years and years and years. So just like a lot of what happens to white people, they finesse. Right? And then we think that when they get to these positions that they can make decisions, that they're making the right decision for everyone, because somehow we were tricked into believing that white people make good decisions for everyone, right? When we now know that they make decisions for themselves, and then, we think that they got their wealth of the right way, and now when, years come to find out they've been finessing and they've been out here Joanna scamming too, right? So that's what he did. There's a 2,200 page indictment, or not an indictment, there's a 2,200 page report with findings about all the sex trafficking and all the things that he was involved in. A long list of people, letters, memos, 15-year-old girls.
Yeah, blackmail on a lot of people too.
He blackmailed people.
Yeah.
It's just a mess. So your president got on Twitter and he's like, they started a hashtag Hillary's body count because they want y'all to think that she had something to do with it. But out of all those names that I just named, why would she be the one? Well, because he's trying to deflect like he always does. So he has all these Russian bots, and a lot of these people have bots, and people buy followers, and so they found out that the majority of this hashtag Hillary body count is coming from somewhere in California. So we don't know. He probably paid someone to do all this, but really, if you think about it, the conspiracy theories say A, he really is not dead. He just got shipped off to some island. B, he is dead and he really did kill himself. Or C, he is dead and someone had him killed in the prison. To that I say, when like Sandra Bland killed herself in prison, we didn't try to really investigate the conspiracy theories then. So why do you care now, black people? But I understand it's the internet. Everybody wants to have a good time. And we're just, no, that man didn't kill himself. But you have to think about it. These politicians, the people that are named, the things that are going on with the mass shootings, he comes out and says that it's the video games and then it's mental illness. Are you inherently mentally ill? That could be debated, but I don't know, because there's pedophilia, there's shooting. Like, what are y'all doing?
Right.
Or we can say, hey, why don't we find out? Why don't we stop electing the same type of person to each position? Why do we still think like this older white men are gonna help everybody? Right. They keep showing us that they're not. Why is Joe Biden the number one candidate right now for the Democratic Party amongst black people? Like, all this stuff just leads me...
Right, familiarity, yeah.
Huh?
He's very... You know why Biden number one.
Tell him why, please.
Obama. It's popularity.
Oh, right. But you can't keep saying... We have a picture in our mind of what the president should look like and be like, I think. And we think that some old white man that was around during segregation is just always gonna fix things.
So I'll say this, Justin, what do you think we should do to actually change that perception? And then two, with this whole Epstein thing, and I remember even before the show, we don't know all the facts. And
I don't even care about that. Why do we there's certain fights that we don't have to be involved in? But I see so many. The point I'm trying to make is, no, I think we should really not put so much.
How do you feel about it?
Okay, on the political aspect of that question, we have to get rid of the mindset of the white savior.
Yes.
And so just the way that we've been socialized, education, programming, we've been taught to just look at white people as being someone that has our best interest, and also that's a group of people that are going to save us.
Wow.
And so that subconsciously that comes over to when we look at politics and the types of politicians that we think are going to be in our best interest. It's like we're used to seeing old white men that we feel like have our best interest. And even when you think about school system, they always talk about how great these presidents are. And they always talk about these presidents throughout history as if they were just like the greatest.
They romanticize it.
Right.
They romanticize the entire history of white supremacy. I don't even really it's all a false narrative. White supremacy is just a false narrative that's been pushed, and they continue to push because they do all this robbing, stealing, and finessing, and they want you to think that it's not robbing, stealing, and finessing. But when you do it, it's robbing, stealing, and finessing.
Right.
So if you really just think about it and not really, everyone's like, well, I don't want to be a Republican or a Democrat. They both did. Okay, great. Well, when you look at a candidate or you look at the people running, erase those words too and just see who they are and what they've done. Because they tell us everything we want to hear, but they do everything that we think they're not doing because they get to just keep saying it. And that's what Trump does. He just says what he wants to say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, everybody's like, oh, he's a racist. He's a, what do you call it when that you don't like, that you don't like poor people? Yeah. He's like He doesn't care what color you are, but he sprinkles in the racism to try to like as a
String
little
up his base.
drug. Like, you know how THC and CBD, he just throws in the THC of racism to reel in more people.
trying to
You gotta.
He don't care about
I don't.
Classes.
He's a classist. He's racist. Don't get me wrong.
Yes.
Because just to throw that in there is racist in itself, to be able to lure people in with your racism. But he's more concerned with, he doesn't care about poor people at all. He thinks poor people are dumb. He thinks that you're poor because you're stupid. He don't care if you're black, white, Mexican, Korean. If you're poor because you're dumb. And that's what he thinks. But he's actually one of those people that are dumb.
No. Yeah. All right. So I'll say Trump isn't as stupid as we think he is. Trump is a master finesser.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Master.
He's a master manipulator.
But I kind of want to dive into a topic about race and wealth and economics.
Yeah, please do.
Because a lot of people think that racism in this country, or just racism period, is just based off of some internal hatred that white people have. But racism is really the child of capitalism.
Absolutely.
Yep. And so through capitalism, there has to be a top and there has to be a bottom.
Right.
And so us being in a country that has extremely Christian morals and values, when there was an economic need as far as needing free labor, they had to find a way to justify what was going on. Right. And so the racism and the whole concept of inferiority and separating people as far as like who's going to be enslaved versus who's going to have wealth by race, that came about due to just the economic needs of the society.
Right.
And so with Trump, he's of course you see the racism, but as you said, it's really more about what's in the best interest of those who are wealthy. And so keeping people divided through race is in the best interest for the people that's at the top, and that's really having that real power and control.
Wow. But that's that ceiling that they put, that they put on people to, like the inferiority complex. It's fake.
Yeah,
for sure.
White fragility. That's all what it is.
I mean, yeah, and the fact that, if he did kill himself, it's because there's something that I've noticed over the years about certain white people. They don't ever want to deal with the consequences of their actions or their bad decisions, because a part of white supremacy has led them to believe they don't have to. And a part of white supremacy has us to believe that we do.
Right.
So as a people, we have to be like, no. You can't, you have to pay the piper too. And that's what they don't want to do. Yeah. They, so they have a man in power right now that says to them, you aren't succeeding, not because you don't have the education, or you don't have the drive, or you don't have the morals, the work ethic that, we know that it takes. You don't have a job because of the black people and the Mexicans. That's why. Yeah. So he uses that. That's what I mean. Like he pulls his racism out to draw people in to be on his team. Right. He has given them an excuse why they failed. Yep. And it's the brown folks. The brown folks are a reason why somebody you don't have a job. Right. Yeah. The brown folks. So you just have to know, when you see stuff like this, you have to be like, oh, they've been doing this but on a higher level for years.
Right. Most definitely. There's nothing new underneath the sun. So how do we even combat that, Justin? Like, how do we try to strategize towards that?
Well, we got to know ourselves. That's the thing. Yeah. So, and that's a large part of why I built the platforms that I built, is focused on education and life lessons from a black perspective.
Yes.
We haven't had voice. And since we haven't had voice, whether it's like from a historical perspective or whether it's in journalism, media, we haven't been able to speak for ourselves, but we also haven't been able to tell truth that is going to empower us. And so we've been receiving so much propaganda that it blinds us to be able to see the finesse. And so, black people were very loving. And
you noticed that?
Very, very loving.
I was thinking about that before.
Ours, yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
That's the God in us.
Yeah. It's the God in us, but it's we misinterpreted what we were supposed to be loving.
We're supposed to be loving each other.
We were supposed to be loving each other. And so, and I think that's where so many people have gone wrong. We put this emphasis on love. We have all these quotes about like love will always prevail. Love is stronger than hate. You can't put out hate with hate. You have to put out hate with love.
Yeah.
But the
That's
thing
for
is,
us. That was our thing.
we ended up loving other people more than we love ourselves.
That's a fact.
And so when you really love yourself, then you're not gonna let certain people manipulate you. You're gonna look out for the best interest of yourself.
Yep.
You're gonna protect yourself. You're not gonna be afraid to fight back and protect yourself because you love yourself more than you love who's trying to take advantage of you.
And
But
that was the outcome of my thought process. We have to love ourselves more than we love other people. Even for just a day. Every day, love a person. I think that people are ashamed, and this is another way white supremacy affected us.
Right.
We became ashamed
It makes
of
you feel bad.
ourselves.
Right.
I was out in the country and I was telling you, and you know, the
Wilkes County,
Confederacy
right?
and all that, and how they still walk around with their Confederate flags because of a war that they lost. We have to get to the point where we have love for ourselves.
We need that same
and
self-love.
we appreciate the person that we are and the struggle that we went through because we're still here.
Yep.
Don't look at yourself as the ones that have been defeated. You know, look at that point. That little point in history has people really ashamed to be black.
Just 200 or 400 years
I mean,
span compared to the whole
but
entire time.
you're not looking at it like, yo, we overcame all that.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry,
Or
go
even
ahead,
before
Sugar.
that time.
Oh no, you're fine. I just wanted to speak because Justin spoke on something that I think is very important to what we're talking about right now, which is this country being deep rooted in Christianity.
I was just about to say.
And like, if you live your life, no matter if you're 80 years old or 8 years old, if you've seen nothing but images of, again, you can go to Mount Rushmore, talking about the presidents. Every church you walk in, you see a white man who is supposed to be your savior in the physical representation of everything you're supposed to be striving for in life. Most of your teachers, I grew up in Miami, Florida. It's a pretty big city. I didn't have I had my first black teacher in 3rd grade, and then it wasn't until 6th grade. My 6th grade teacher was my second black teacher, first black male teacher.
Oh, wow.
And he happened to go to jail for a very long time for selling certain services and products to children.
So that probably
So that goes right back in Trump's
Stereotypes.
mindset. So
go.
everything white in my head is right, and everything black in my head. Not saying that one example, is my example for black men, but that's so many people's experiences. So a lot of it has to go back to what you're saying, not re-educate ourselves, and more than that, unlearn a lot of the lies that we were taught and fill our brain with the actual things that, again, if I have this representation of this black man, this black woman, I'm probably gonna love myself a little bit more as opposed to loving everybody else. So
Yeah.
just my
And
2
that
cents.
goes back to what I'm saying about looking at things that are happening as a sign. You know what I'm saying? Like, you told us for all this time that white was right. You told us for all this time that you got where you are because you went to the best school and you know the best people.
Absolutely.
But now that you're coming out with this one bought their way to this school, this one has mental illness and they've shotting up every school or every movie theater or every club, and this one is a pedophile. That one's a pedophile, this one's a pedophile, and you have these secret like cult type. What is going on with y'all? So it really wasn't that y'all were intellectually,
Superior.
superior. And it wasn't that, you went to the best schools. It's that you did this on purpose. And it's all, the whole white supremacy hood is coming off,
It's
no
a lie.
pun intended.
Yeah.
But all the stuff that's going on in the news is, to me, the universe speaking to us specifically as African Americans to say, yo, rise up. That shit that they think is false. You see what they did. You see all these indictments and all that stuff, to me, is a secret being revealed to us. Like, yo, I know they've been telling y'all for all this time that, you can't get what we got, but look how they got there. They do the same thing. Right now, I say this to people all the time. This country is being run by the Sopranos.
Yeah, it's like a game.
A mob mentality. And until we get to the point where we think we deserve better and that we can do something about it, people don't vote and people don't contribute or participate in the political process because they think they don't need to or they think they don't matter.
Yeah, that's it.
That's why.
That's it.
Back to you, sir. Because
Let's go.
I'll sit here and they'll tell you. I'll just talk it up.
But you have
Go
Wait,
ahead.
you have a question or you saying for me to pick up?
You can pick up and then I'll ask you.
Okay,
a
all right.
question.
So answering your question specifically, it's us learning our history.
That's it. Yeah.
We really got to start learning our history, and not just the part of history where we were enslaved, but the aspects of history that show the greatness before slavery occurred, and also the greatness that occurred after slavery, and those instances of where us building great things and it being torn from us.
Yes.
They don't tell that part of the story.
Yes.
For example, in Miami, there's a side of town called Overtown. Now, Overtown, it's a pretty poor side of the city, but what most people don't know is it was almost like a Harlem of the South at one point. But what they did was they put a major highway right through that side of town.
The business.
Right, and that highway had no exits. So after so you have thousands of homes that have to move, but then there's no exits there, so the flow of money isn't coming. So then after a while you're gonna lose businesses, and that area is gonna slowly just deteriorate. And so when you have the back history to how Overtown became what it is today, and Overtown is making great leaps and bounds as far as recovering, but if you have that back history of how it got to a certain low point, that completely changes your perspective of how you view yourself. And so it transitions from being a moral, ethical issue to where you think like something has to be wrong with black people, to you understand like, no, there's not something wrong with black people. Black people were taken advantage of.
Yep.
Right. Imagine him and being in Miami at that age when he hadn't seen any black teachers or known what was going on, to have heard the story of that and been able to go there and actually see and be like, wow, this was a rich area.
Yeah.
And I think too, with the music and the stuff like that, like you were saying about love, when we create a culture of love amongst each other, it's going to change everything. It's going to change entertainment. It's going to change what we look at. Because to me, all power is in the people. When the desire to see all the ratchet stuff on TV goes away, it'll go away. When you start making, like you are right now, major strides toward just great blackness on reality TV, there'll be a growing demand for it.
It's the first step. And two,
then we'll think of you and we'll be like, yo, he turned everything around. Like,
it takes that one person.
Because that he did that and he made such an impact. And that clip is going around. I don't know, because some people keep track of how many times. Do you know how many times that clip has been shared?
No, I mean, it gets to a point where you
stop counting?
You can't, you will never know. It gets to a place where you just never know.
Well, if it got to me, it went around a lot. Because I don't even look for stuff like that. And
I had to send it to you.
Yo, this is dope. I love it.
It is.
So, once we start doing that, because like back in the days with slavery and all that, they came out with old Negro spirituals, right? So that was coming from a place of pain. They just were like struggling songs. And to hear that kind of song, to me, that is like what the internet is doing now. Like that's the new, I call them young Negro spirituals, right? Whenever I see a post that gets turned around a million times and it's like, well, Trump's gonna get reelected. Well, we ain't gonna be able to. Like, to me, those are all young Negro spirituals. But when I see somebody like him and he's just like, no, we got the power to do this, and let me tell you why this is going on, I'm just like, yes.
That's what it takes.
So what was the first video you make, and why did you decide to do these?
I can't say first video because it's been a long journey. And then I've grown and evolved so much as a person.
So what started the journey? Did something happen?
I mean, I've always, I guess, been a deep thinker, and so I've always voiced my opinions and my views. And I started out making music, and a lot of young people they don't realize that they're really just people that are trying to be heard. They have a message and have something to say.
Yeah.
But for so long, music, for so many of us, was seen as the only avenue where we could actually express ourselves, be respected in our community for our thoughts, and actually have an opportunity to be able to like feed ourselves and take care of ourselves and make it out of our situation.
Right.
And so with the internet, it's really allowed for us, like, we don't have to tap dance in order to get important information out. And so one of the things that made hip hop so influential is really just black people saying important stuff and sending over information in a way where it can be understood in a mass scale. And so now we're able to put that information into a different format. And so when I realized that, and I realized, okay, I worked at a record label in Miami too.
Wow. Okay.
Are you from Miami?
I'm from Florida, so
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I'm born and raised in Clearwater, Florida, and then I went to Florida International University in Miami, and so Miami's pretty much like a second home to me. I spent about 5-6 years in Miami, so I'm very familiar with that area too. But you know, I ended up working at this major record company in Miami, and so but what I realized is everything that I thought I wanted as a child was a facade.
Wow.
And I realized that while I was working there, I realized I was a slave while working there. But I also part of my job was to check emails, and we had a lot of every single day you would have hundreds of people sending their demos.
Yeah, I believe
Probably
it.
99.6% of them were just pure trash.
Oh God.
But the label wasn't even popping at the time, and so if I'm thinking to myself like, okay, if the label's not popping right now and we're getting flooded with this many demos, like what is Def Jam getting? Like what is Hove getting? Like what is? And so I realized so many black men especially are playing their life on a lottery. And so, and not to say don't go for it,
Right.
but
The chances.
if that's your only hope for getting to a higher level in life, we're in a bad predicament.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there, I'm going through the emails, and I'm in this environment where I see that a lot of the entertainment industry and things was an illusion, and I was like, wait a minute, like I'm playing my life, I'm basically depending on a lottery for my entire life.
Gambling.
And so that's when I just started like recreating things and refocusing my energy.
Beautiful.
And you know, a mentor of mine pointed out that like you don't have to take the music route in order to influence your people or in order to get information out anymore. Like blogging and building platforms is a way where you can strategically build those sort of things and strategically build influence and strategically have an impact rather than just waiting for gatekeepers or you know, praying 10 years that you get a hit record. And so not to discourage people from pursuing their dreams, but just always understand that
It's just the facts.
there's different avenues to go about doing so. But to get back to your original question, one of my biggest wake up calls, like I always was aware of things that go on regarding law enforcement and oppression and things. Like always to a certain level, I was aware of these things. But what really woke me up for real is I was at Florida International University. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning, and me and my frat brother, we get pulled over by these two officers. And so the road that we were on, it was a winding road. You probably can do about 35 to 40 miles per hour comfortably. And so it's nighttime. I look in my rearview mirror, and there's this car. It's like it's about to hit my bumper. So I say, what the fuck? And so I go to switch lanes so it doesn't hit my car. And like right when I'm about to switch lanes, the lights and sirens come on. So I'm like, oh, it's the police.
Okay.
So I pull over. Officer walks over to the car. He said, why are you going so fast? I had to do a $120 just to catch up with you. He was like, were you trying to run from me? Step out the car.
What?
So I told my frat brother, I say, Malcolm, call somebody. So the officer hears me say that. Another officer comes to the other side, and they take us both out. Within a matter of a minute, like they didn't ask for my ID, license, registration, none of that. They didn't even know my name. So, but matter of seconds, I'm in handcuffs. I'm being searched. My frat brother, you know, he's being searched as well, and the officer has him. Now, I'm in handcuffs, and I already realized my rights have been violated. So I'm just like, might as well give them permission to search the car because you're just really trying to get home.
Yeah.
It's nobody else. It's just it's two white boys. It's two white officers. Nobody else there. So they go search the car. They find $100 in my front console area. The officer says to the other officer, he says, "Hey, look what I found." So the officer that was closest to me, he says, "Put it in his front left pocket, so that way when we take him in, we can document it."
What?
And so I'm in handcuffs, like, wow, this is serious. Like, this ain't no game. And so they kept changing their stories. It was going from like, why were you going so fast? Why did you run the stop sign? Why didn't you stop? And they just they're moving all around. So I realized this is a serious situation, and my father has had a career in law enforcement, and so that's one of the ways I'm able to.
You had some knowledge.
Yeah, I'm able to break down a lot of stuff and see it from a political realm in a lot of ways, because my father was heavy into politics and
Oh wow.
and just having a career in law enforcement. So I grew up around a lot of that. So I started saying like, I started realizing like saying that my father has been in law enforcement is the only way that we might get out of this situation.
Get some respect as well.
Right. So, because, you know, they have codes and, you know, law enforcement is a game.
Yep.
So, the last thing you want to do is get caught up in a situation where you're trying to have some officer's kid on some trumped up charges. Like that's a bad situation for if you're an officer. So I started like my dad's in law enforcement, does law enforcement back home. So the officers they put us in the back of the police car. We're in 2 different cars, and as he's closing the door, he says, "Don't worry, you're not being detained." I'm in the back of the police car in handcuffs. He's saying, "Don't worry, you're being detained." Closes the door. He calls my dad at just like 1 o'clock in the morning. It's past 1 o'clock, and I'm in the police car. I'm just like, please pick up. My dad picks up. I didn't hear what was said. They get off the phone. He comes back to the car. He says, he lets us out, and they say, we didn't document or report any of this, so you don't even have to tell anybody if you don't want to.
Oh, wow.
They let us go. We filed. Oh, and my dad on the phone call, he just thought it was a regular routine traffic stop. He had no clue that his child was in the back of a police car. So we file our reports. It takes them a long time to get back to us with the reports. But when I finally get the report, I can tell that these officers sat down and went down line by line with a lawyer or someone to combat everything that we said. And so inside the report, it says that they pulled me over because I was speeding or something, and they were talking to me, and I looked nervous, and I attempted to reach under my seat multiple times. And so I'm reading this report, and it's just 2 black boys and 2 white officers.
What are they gonna take? No.
So we gotta take this to court. Who are they gonna believe? The black boys who are saying that, look, like they pulled us over, snatched us out the car, or these 2 white officers say, no, we were talking to him, he looked nervous and he tried to reach under his seat, so that's the reason we detained him.
He sounds more believable.
And so this happens every single day, multiple times. The only difference is we finally have some cameras so people can believe it. And so like white America, they don't even have to deal with that type of stuff, so they can't even fathom something like that happening. Like it sounds so unrealistic to them.
I got a question for you.
For sure.
So with you having a background in, you know, your father coming up in the police academy and all that, we was at an event last week and they was talking about different solutions.
Yep.
Do you feel like voting is effective, or what do you feel like a solution would be for us to overcome something like this?
All right, so I feel like if we're gonna be in this system and we're gonna try to play the game of this system, then I believe voting is very important. If we're actually gonna, like, if y'all not gonna pick up weapons or whatever and try to riot and overturn something, all right, then the other option is basically what Malcolm X was saying, it's the ballot or the bullet. So clearly we haven't chosen the bullet. So all right then, if you're gonna go by the system, then operate the system in a way that is gonna be most effective for you. So you know, you have certain people who encourage black people not to vote. I'm not one of those people. I'm gonna tell y'all to vote. But the thing is, we also have to be putting money behind whoever we're voting in. So you
have to be involved in.
You gotta lobby sometimes.
Yeah.
That's what we gotta learn how to move.
I got another question too. Also with the police thing, again, with you being in the household, somebody that was are you more lenient towards that police brutality, or do you understand it? Do you have a better understanding of it?
I would say I have a better understanding of it, but I wouldn't say I'm more lenient of it.
Can I just answer that really quick? Because you can too, but my dad was in law enforcement too. And you know how people say, you know, black people are not a monolith. You can't just say, oh, all black people are like this, whatever. All people in law enforcement are not like that. It is a gang, and there are people that, just like at any other job, you work there for the benefits, like to feed your family, to do this, to do that. And if you see 2 young black kids, you know, you might treat them the same way you would treat anybody else. There's a large majority of them that are not like that, because there is another way that you're in law enforcement, because you were brought up under that whole, like, plantation, you know, mentality. So in some cities, from the plantation to the police department, generations of their family have just grown up in law enforcement. And there are some people that just say, hey, I just want to work for the city because they got good benefits. You know what I'm saying? So for my dad, I did some shit and I got over. I'm not going to lie, like a couple of times. But on the other side of the spectrum, there's the scenario that happened to you.
But even in my situation, I got over.
You did. That's true.
That's the thing. That's like,
did,
I
yeah.
never would have got out of that situation if I wasn't able to make that phone call.
Yeah.
And a large majority of us are in no position to make that phone call.
Yeah.
And just understanding that, just like how many people are in situations like that, and we're just viewing them as being criminals. And even black people, like that's the thing that blows my mind, is like we can all sit here and agree that the system is corrupt. We can all sit here and agree that we don't trust the officers in our community in large part, and we can all agree that it's just like for the most part for black people it's a setup. But at the same time, when someone is a victim of that system, we still criminalize them, and we still look down upon them. Yeah. And so that's something I would like to challenge our communities on, is not looking down upon people who have been victimized by the system. So that's one. And then another thing, as far as law enforcement and my view of people who go into law enforcement, I'm ambivalent about that, because I don't want to tell little kids not to, if their goal is to be a officer, especially if it's a black child, I'm not going to say like, no, you shouldn't do that, because we do need representation. We do need people in those types of spaces that are going to be able to have an impact there. On the other side of it, though, like, what's the officer's job?
What's supposed to protect and serve?
But I guess my question was more towards, like, I know you growing up, your dad probably came home and he had stories to tell you about stuff that went on in the field. And probably times he probably really feared for his life. It's like so much, and it's like you don't know when to react or when to, and that's what I was asking. Like, do you
Oh, in essence, yeah.
Leeway in a sense like that. Even though those white cops was lying and said you were, reaching for certain things, but in that instance, do you understand what a cop would say something like where they fear for their life just from hearing stories from your pops?
Yes, I can understand. Thing is, if you're an officer, you're trained to basically look at the whole entire world from a place of suspicion. The biggest problem with being trained to look at the whole entire world from a place of suspicion is that we've been trained to also look at black people as being the suspicious people. Yeah. Right. And so that there's so many other factors that go into it, just as far as like the way that communities are policed and how heavily those communities are policed and things of that nature. But I get it in the sense of officers being on edge, and especially if you're in the force for an extended period of time, you've seen so many crazy things.
Probably got PTSD.
Right. And so I could see how that could cause for them to be on edge, but
that's the job they signed up for, though.
Yes. But for something I want to point out, though, and in my specific situation, what really resonated with me is it was intentional.
Right.
That was the main difference that really woke me up, was the intentionality behind it. Here it is. It's two black college students. My tag, my parking decal lets you know that I'm a student that goes here. And so here it is. These officers know that we attend the school, and I'm telling them, like, we both go here. We're about to graduate soon, and I'm thinking that this is going to help them allow us to get off.
They can ease up a little.
To see what kind of kids you are.
But little did I know that was more incentive for them to arrest us,
intimidate you,
because we're very naive in the sense of thinking that, or not acknowledging the fact that white supremacists, like active white supremacists, intentional white supremacists, like Ku Klux Klan members and these other groups have invaded law enforcement.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so
Those are the people that I was referencing when I mean like they grew up in that. Like that's what you do. You grew up and you become a cop or a correction officer because that's where white supremacists hang out
even if
at.
we look at the history of it, and I know Justin, you've probably talked about this plenty of times. Just the history of the police department. It was slave patrol. It just morphed into policing now.
Right.
So
that's
that was one of the
what they
things.
use, intimidation. And to me, when Trayvon Martin got killed, in another realm, I think that white supremacists, racists, they all in their mind were killing Barack Obama.
Yeah, it was a shot. Mike Brown.
It
as
was
well,
like
when he
it was
on
like
the ground for
all
4 hours.
those when all that police killing
was
started
backlash.
ramping up and all this stuff started ramping up. It was to try to get young black men.
I'm gonna kill your hope.
To be afraid.
So Justin, I'll ask you this before we jump into the next topic. Tova, one of the people that was on the show with you, your castmates, I would see sometimes so she would cry, she would play the victim plenty of times. And one of my questions for you is, for people that's ignorant, sometimes there are a lot of white people out there that's ignorant to the things that we go through, all of that. How could we describe them white privilege? Because if we say white privilege, like with Tova, she was like, what is that? Like, how do I have privilege? Because I had to work hard. Like, I'm working 40 hours a week.
It's like this.
Anybody with a 400-year head start.
Right. But, and Steve, you know what's crazy?
What
Even
did
if we
Steve
say
say?
that, they'll be like, oh, but my family came here as immigrants, this, that, and
You got
the
a
third.
400-year head start, bro.
400-year head start.
Word,
But
okay.
how do we simplify that? Because some people, they could try to counter that and say, I'm Italian, my family came to New York in the 30s and the 20s. So how do we simplify
They
white
came
privilege?
here. They weren't brought
your
here.
skin, your skin.
They came
It
here
don't
willingly.
matter if you if your skin color look like theirs, you get
You
a
can
pass.
blend in. Yeah.
Like honestly, like I just recently stopped doing it. But if you wasn't black to me, you was white.
Yeah.
Because in the world, that's how they look. Like
Yeah.
you either black or you a minority or you white at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
So how you feel
like
about
I even
that?
look at like Asians, like they consider
East
white
Indians
to me.
too.
You feel me?
Yeah.
The Indian they consider white because they
Yeah.
get the same privileges they do.
Yep. How do you
I mean,
feel
Well,
about
I don't think that they get the same privileges. I think that they walk around without the
burden?
burden of
There's actually been books and articles and like scholarly research written on this as far as Asians being the model immigrants or the model American citizens.
Okay.
And so with them being the model citizens and white supremacy benefiting off of them being classified as the model citizen, it allows for white people to say, okay, look, if you work hard and you get your education and you abide by the system, you can be great too. You people just aren't doing it.
Right.
But if you pay attention to Asian communities, and this is no jab at them, it's just culturally, this is one of the ways that they've been able to climb up in this society, is they're not very vocal about oppression. And so with them being silent about a lot of their oppression, it gives white supremacy and the systems that we operate in an incentive to raise them in society. And so there's a continuum. It's like, okay, white is a social status more than it is skin color.
Facts.
So white represents privilege. If you have a group of people that represent just the epitome of privilege, then you also have to have a group of people that are the unprivileged or the people that that are the most
Malcolm
oppressed.
X said you can't have capitalism.
But I think as
without
black
racism.
people, we accept that role though. Because I feel like I
That's
always
what I'm
say
saying,
we give
yeah.
white people too much power.
Yeah,
for
that's
us
what
to
we've been
even
saying.
for this whole episode, we've been talking about what white people been doing. Like just for us to like care that much, and even for us, it's like we're not comparing ourselves. We're not saying that we want to take over the Asian. It's always black versus white.
Yeah.
If we get to the point where we stop ignoring them, we know we got all this power.
Focus
We
on
know
ourselves.
we're this
Yeah.
creative. We know we can
Right.
do all this. We know what we need to do.
Right.
So why do we keep? It's like we playing victim. I feel like we have to stop
That's
playing
those young
victim.
Negro spirituals I was telling you about.
It's okay. It's important to address what's been done
Yes,
so that we're in a mental space
to get out of it.
to get out of it. And because if we don't address what's been done to us, then we don't. It's basically like say you're in a class and you're taking a test, and the student next to you, they have a 4.0 GPA, and then yours is like a 1.5.
You barely getting by.
Like you barely getting by. And so the whole entire course, you've been thinking like, wow, this person's very smart. Like, and I need to get it together. But if someone came in one day and said, yo, you've been taking a completely different test. The teacher
The whole time.
The whole time
That's a great
you've been having the right answers. Yeah. The teacher has been even marking your right answers as wrong. And this other student, even when they have the wrong answers, it's been marked as correct. So this is why they have this 4.0 GPA. You're actually smarter than this student.
Right.
You just got to realize it. And so I think it's important to address that. But as you said, it's important to address even more so our strength and our power and what we do for ourselves. And so one thing I make a point of doing is I never talk about what white people or other groups need to do.
Right.
It's always what black people need to do.
Take accountability.
Even if I talk about what white people have done or what any other group has done, the focus is what black people need to do. And so for any oppressed group, I will never recommend for an oppressed group to wait on the leniency of someone that's oppressing them in order to make progress. It's crazy. So
stop trying to appeal to the morality.
Stop
of people
asking for
that
reparations.
have
Stop asking for
Yes, so
reparations.
you gotta get it.
Stop
Yeah,
asking
make
for
it
like
up.
everything.
Yeah.
They not about to give you power. Like you got to think
That changes the
power
whole
is probably the
system.
most
Right.
important thing in this world.
Yeah.
They not about to give you the power.
Mm-hmm.
They not
But
about
are
to
they
give us
begging
power.
for reparations, or are they just telling you why we are gonna get them?
We beg because
Or
we.
we're gonna
we-
take them.
I say
We're
we
gonna
begging
elect
because
people
we're
that
just
believe in
because
getting
we're
them.
just talking. We're not taking no action behind what we're saying. So in a sense, it gets to the point. We've been doing this for so many years. How many
We are
years we been
taking
doing
action.
this?
We're
It's like
gonna
you
vote for
begging.
the people that want us to get it, and we're gonna continue to.
But how long we been
press
waiting for
for it.
reparations though?
I see the answer. What you think?
all right, look, it's like okay, so all right, so the whole concept of train energy. Train energy is you're gonna get to your destination no matter what. It's whether somebody comes aboard or somebody doesn't come aboard, you're gonna get to your destination no matter what. And so with that, we need to have that view of look, we're gonna have generational wealth no matter what. Like we're gonna get in positions of power no
Whether
matter
you give
what.
it to us or not.
If the reparations come, cool. If they never come, fine. We're still gonna get there. If you want to help us, cool. If you don't want to help us, fine. We're still gonna get there. And so if there's allies that want to help us progress, then fine. Like come aboard. But I'm not gonna wait on you. And that's what it needs
That's
to be.
the
It's
right
like
mindset.
I think too many people are waiting for reparations and like that's the thing. We've gotten so used to just praying and hoping
For
it
the
to come.
future, like we need stuff now.
Right, and so I mean, everybody has a different spiritual practices and different religions, and that's important to be in tune with yourself and the universe and be in tune with your mind. But we just cannot wait for something or someone to come save us. We are in a position to save ourselves, and even from a religious aspect, if we're made in God's image, then like God wouldn't make us in their image without giving us power to do God-like things.
You're God.
And so
Some
we
songs. Yep.
we've already been blessed with this power and ability. It's just really just like we gotta just make it happen and just stop
You
waiting
know
for
what?
somebody else to change.
I need y'all to hear what he just said. And I don't know if you can say it again, because sometimes I can't say stuff twice. But sometimes we get caught up in so many words, which words are very powerful. But what he just said is so important. I want him to tell y'all again, because that's bottom line. That's basically the answer, like
All
right
right.
there. Like I really wish that he go ahead, because that's
All right,
that's
I'm gonna break it down. Okay, so the whole concept of train energy is you're gonna get to your destination no matter what, and this applies to you as an individual.
Yep.
This applies to us as a people, as a group. So don't wait on anybody else to change. You focus on just building up yourself, empowering yourself. If the help comes, cool. But if it never comes, that's fine as well. We still gonna get there. And as a people, that's the type of mentality that we need to have. It's like, don't beg anybody to help you, whether it's black, white, whatever, Hispanic, from on an individualistic level or as a group. Now, of course, like black people, we need to come together, work together, and get to where we're going. But outside of that, whoever wants to help, cool. If you don't want to help, that's cool as well. We still gonna get there.
Black people need to get together
Yeah.
and love each other.
Mhm.
Like
That's
if
the
you
first
are
step.
somewhere right now, nothing happens like just because. Everything happens for a reason. So every time that when you hear this, go on from there with this knowledge, because you're only responsible for what you know, right?
Yep.
You're only responsible for what you've been told.
Yep.
If no one ever told you need to love black people and put black people first right now, you heard it today.
Yep.
So go forward from this point on with that knowledge and wisdom and
Yeah.
understanding.
I think Steve and Sid got a question.
Go ahead.
So this for all three of y'all. Do y'all feel like that things have to get more tragic for us to come together, or like this is just the right time now? Because I feel like everybody has their own agenda and their own viewpoints, and things are not tragic enough.
I think that we
gotta be proactive.
We are at a point now where, like I said before, the universe is speaking to us and showing us things for what they really, really, really are, and it's time right now to come together and stop contributing and participating and giving your energy and your money to things that aren't for the betterment of us as a people. If it's not like about building culture, love, turn it off, unfollow it, follow somebody that is of that energy like him.
Appreciate you.
Watch stuff that he's on. You know what I mean? Like, it's time for us to refocus our energy every single minute, every single money, every single attention that you give yourself to. If it doesn't represent black love and black community, I'm done.
All right, I got you. All right, I don't want to say this to be divisive, but it's a reality too. I think race has really simplified things to a great extent, and so you gotta understand also, in the midst of talking about black progress, there's subgroups to black people.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get so caught up in race that we don't recognize class. Mm-hmm. And so what benefits the poor black man doesn't always benefit the wealthy black man. Yeah. And so depending on whatever spectrum you are on that, you got to understand that you're going to have to work with those people that are trying to work with you. Yeah. And so there's going to be black people that have the same best interests as you, and there's going to be black people that don't have the same best interests as you. And so as a whole, it's in our best interest to collectively come together, but a reality of it that we have to be aware of, or we shouldn't be naive about, is
the spectrum
of it. Because you look at even integration policies. There's a long history of middle class and upper class and like bourgeoisie black people making decisions,
especially here in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's a deep history of that.
But making decisions for the masses.
Yep.
And a lot of times when people get to certain levels, they get detached from like the grassroots.
Bob Johnson.
Okay.
BET.
When people get to a certain level, they get detached.
But that goes back to the same conversation that we were having when you said self-love. Mm-hmm. And I think once we get a certain amount of dollars in our pocket, we feel like, oh, I don't have to be black no more. I can start hanging out with this group of people. I got this car. I got a white wife. So now, with my status, I'm not really as black.
I agree with people get into, I guess they acting different when they get more money. Mm-hmm. But I was listening to a podcast, and I talked about it before, but it was a basketball player, and he was saying, like, when he moved out the hood and moved to the suburb, he just became more comfortable, and like his mind wasn't on the swivel. So it's just like, I can understand your lifestyle, like your mindset change. You're not on edge all the time. You're not hustling all the time. So it's just like you're not really experiencing the right. Black experience, or that the people in the inner city are experiencing. But so can you blame somebody for that?
And I think that's the challenge right there. So how do you feel about that? Because it's like we're trying to make it, but then if we do make it, we kind of get stuck in a spot that people don't want for us to even be around.
I mean, in a way, and this is more so, like, I guess I don't even want to say in a fairy tale world, but the truth of the matter is, as long as we have capitalism in place, we're always gonna have those types of divides. And so in a simplified manner, we're able to just place a race blanket on top of it. Mm-hmm. But going back to what I was saying earlier, racism and the way that we are divided racially is due to capitalistic needs. And so as long as we're operating in the capitalistic system, we're always going to have those types of divides. Like, even if we got rid of race tomorrow, and
it would go down to classism.
It would go down to classism, or we would find something else to separate people.
Yeah.
So even with that being said, I feel like back in the day, even like with the Malcolm X's and Martin Luther Kings of the world, we still had those divides, but they still was backing. Everybody was like on the agenda because shit was so bad. Like, right. You know what I'm saying?
And
so that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Shit had to get more tragic for us.
So we don't even have a choice no more.
Yeah, so we have to, like, we got to be on one accord. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like so many people, like you were just saying, had their own agenda, or they made it to a certain level. And that's what I mean about all that. Like,
yeah, I'm gonna say this, and you can wait for a minute. So I see you. I hate to say it, but I agree with you in the sense of
we don't believe it's real yet.
The reason,
right?
That's what I'm doing.
yeah,
you're right, Kim.
Yeah, the reason we haven't had much pushback is because we went from the racism, the form of racism evolved over time, and so we used to have overt racism. It's just in your face, and we're seeing it some now, but it's still not as blatant as what it was back in the day. Like when we had.
You know why?
What would you say?
Because the laws, because of imagery, because Malcolm and Martin, what now we call the media, but the people that worked for the newspapers started following them and putting pictures out there, and they saw the dogs and the hoses,
right?
And people in the North were like, "Oh shit,
this really is."
They are down there wilding."
Emmett Till as well.
That was a big case.
Emmett Till, when his mother decided to put his picture in the magazines, when she said, "Come on, photographers, I want everybody to see what they did to my baby." That's how powerful imagery is.
So, do you think right now that that's happening again somewhat when we see Mike Brown when he was laying in the street for, I think, approximately 4 to 5 hours, and we see Trayvon, Sandra Bland? Do you think that that's probably resurfacing?
Right.
Yeah, people getting Philando Castile. Yeah, right. In real time, too. We can see it that day that it happened.
We have flares of it. It's like there's flares of reminders, and then we get rocked back to sleep. And that's the place where we are.
Start scrolling
now,
through your timeline.
First, like back when you had segregation, no matter how qualified you are, no matter what your skill set were, no matter what your connections were, for the most part, you can't live in this neighborhood. You can't work at this job. Right. You can't go to this school. But now it's just like we'll see a flare of a reminder every now and then. It's like, oh, okay, they're still shooting black people. Like, whoa, we should go protest and riot. But we get sunk right back into thinking everything's okay. And so I hate to say it, but things gonna have to get worse for us to really, for the masses to recognize that, it applies to you. Like they trying to kill you too.
Right.
So, outside of that, we've been just very reactive instead of proactive.
Did you ever answer?
Huh?
Did you ever answer?
Oh, I'm letting everybody else answer because I have a question.
So my question is about being proactive. This is my first year teaching in the kindergarten classroom, and I teach at a Title I, predominantly black, all-girls school.
Yes.
And our biggest mission is making our babies feel like they're in a room where we're cultivating young black girls learning. And we don't even we don't refer to them as students, we refer to them as scholars. They refer to each other as sisters, and that's the environment that we're trying to create. So my question is, I was listening to your train mentality, and I want to figure out a way. I was telling Caleb with Black History Month coming up, and it's going to be a big deal at our school. I want to be involved and help create these lesson plans on how we're going to teach them this. Last week was a week of Culture Week where we taught them about being an Ivy girl, and trying to get them to get into their culture and their spirit. So we're going to try to have these weeks basically every month. So my question to you is, how in the classroom do you feel like, because our babies, they're going to be the ones to create these changes that we're talking about, because this is going to take a while. So my question is, how do you feel like we can try to cultivate these like that train mentality that you had and these different ideas into the classroom to a level to where a 5-year-old can understand it and we can start implementing this now?
Great question.
I would say you could start showing them imagery of people of color overcoming adversity at an early age, and just being in those positions of power at an early age. Because even for myself, it took me a while to realize that we're just as, I won't even say just as great. Like we have abilities that surpass
the original. Yeah.
So, but just introducing them that to an early age, and like letting them see themselves. Because at the white schools, you see white heroes. And
just be there, be that.
Yeah.
And you
are that.
Right.
So when you get to school and they see that, just continue to be that and let them witness it. Some things that are unspoken, children might do what you say, but they are always going to do what you do.
That's a fact.
So even as a teacher, you are one of their highest, heaviest influences. So just be it and let it come out of you. You know what I mean? Let that energy represent that. I think if we all just did that more often, instead of just saying, like, you're going to have to make announcements about everything. And that's what I was telling you I loved about Justin, because when he's on the show, it's like, you don't even have to, Like you see him doing that, and people start questioning him, like, "Yo, why aren't you like?" And he's just like, no.
Sleep in the front, just chilling.
You know what I mean? Like
in his hot wings.
Right.
So you just have to
Amen.
be it.
Amen.
Yeah.
But
That's
you've
it.
been. What
That's
were you
beautiful.
gonna say? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're already doing it.
Yeah.
It's just
You're spending 8 hours a day.
You're already doing it.
It's already a
Go
third of your
ahead.
day.
But
What's up?
So-
no, you're good.
Oh yeah, so I just wanted to touch on two things that were like a half a second ago. The, I guess, need for things to get worse, and also in that same conversation, solutions. So I absolutely agree. I think a large portion of us have been raised by parents who've seen things that we've never seen. So like, for instance, let's just take me and Caleb, for instance. If we were planning to be on the front lines in our heads, our parents are gonna be like, nah, bruh, I done seen what happened. That's not gonna be my baby. So we gotta realize, like, there's so many things that happen in multi-generations that end in our generation, that'll end in the next generation, and so on and so forth. So like, all of these things are, it's not just oh man, it's too comfortable. Like, we've been, like you said, rocked to sleep by the system and our own system of, oh, you don't want to be too loud, oh, you don't want to, because the people who came before us don't want us to be the living examples of what they've seen. So that's a large part that's kind of rocking us to sleep.
Just not to interrupt, but just to
absolutely go for it. Absolutely.
My father was raised in Jim Crow South. He actually grew up on a plantation. So if he knows that I do this or whatever, but if he really
he knew what you were talking about.
Yeah. Oh my God.
They gonna find you.
You know, like, girl, like, you know what I mean? So you're absolutely right. Yeah. But when you have to do what you have to do, you know what I mean? Like, when whatever's placed on your heart to be, because at the end of the day, I've seen people die for less.
Absolutely. And to expand on that, so a solution is obviously what's going on right here,
right? But
we have to do it in larger scale. So like, going back to Justin, you being a pioneer, I hate to put this on your shoulders, but like when you said that earlier, and it was kind of, I think, a joke, but it's the reality. It's like stepping out and being those first that make entertainment educational or provide some balance. Like, even to go, to a more entertainment, more direct entertainment. Someone like, a Nipsey, someone who was committed to one woman, had multiple businesses, took care of their family, wasn't out there living crazy in the
Lyrics
streets.
Wasn't trash.
Those are we need to start creating examples.
Right. As a person, I'm sorry, I just want to.
Let's talk. We dialogue.
Right.
As a person that grew up with hip hop in its early years.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know how to say this, but Nipsey, he is who he is because of what you guys turned hip hop into. Mm-hmm. Like he is one of many.
Absolutely.
People that rap. There was a whole sub-genre of hip hop that was specifically.
But I used him for a specific purpose, not because
he's influential for you guys.
No, and he's influential for you as well. Yeah. I used him for a specific reason, is because he did everything that all the people that you are stating, but also is still cool. And that's the most important part. Yes. We had a conversation previously about crowdfunding to get Justin a Bentley or a Benz, and it was a joke, but at the same time, that's what we gravitate to. And even though we're not trying to push certain things, we have to realize we're not going to wake people up out of certain slumbers. We have to continue using that same medicine. You
got to put candy in the medicine.
Exactly, until they come out. So
that's a good idea.
The reality of everything is making everything cooler that is going to provide value to our people, and doing it at the best possible levels.
And that's what it takes. And two, speaking on that being cool, bridging that gap, Rich Paul and LeBron,
Yeah.
You don't have to be a Bron fan, I get it. But at the end of the day, I know. And Steve, too.
Steve said, yeah, you do.
No, bro, he's amazing.
No, he's an amazing human being.
Amazing.
Appreciate
Yeah,
that,
I
Steve. Thank you.
appreciate it.
That took a lot out of Steve.
You might not, you know what I'm saying? As a
He's a
sports
great guy.
fanatic, you
Yeah.
might want to
Critique.
Yeah,
but
but he's an amazing human being.
yeah.
Proud of you, Steve.
Oh,
Came a
Thank
long
you.
way, bro.
Is that a tear?
That took everything out of the real.
But he just like to his point though, like LeBron is that family guy that's
Right.
very successful. You always see him with his kids.
And he has the cars, he has the money,
He
but he's
has
still
the
doing
cars.
it.
He
Yeah.
still, dresses real fly.
Yeah.
He's a cool dad.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Taco
And he's
Tuesday.
always
Black
out
man
there.
that don't
Yeah.
cheat.
Taco Tuesday.
Huh?
Black man that don't cheat.
Black men don't cheat. Yes, sir. That's a fact. You say he ain't shit. Steve just
What did Steve say?
Steve said he ain't shit. He said,
Oh, leave LeBron
But,
alone. But
with,
yeah, that talk about that because
yeah.
I'm
Me and
one.
Kim were talking about that when that first
I
dropped.
don't really
Yeah.
You put me up
Okay.
on it
All right,
because
so
I
yeah.
wasn't when it comes to sports. I kind of like
Most
tune out.
stuff. So me and Kim all throughout the week, we send like 10 messages a day. Like we read the news articles, we be sharing them with each other because I think again we can learn from each other, older and younger generation.
Yeah.
When I saw this one, I said, "Dang, Kim is gonna eat this up." When I saw Rich Paul
The
NCAA
Rich Paul rule, yeah.
Right.
Tell
So-
them what that entails.
Right. And I think that this was something that was brewed up over years because if we look at the context behind it, how even last year with LA, it was this anonymous source. I hate when they do this. But when they were trying to say that, oh, Rich Paul was taking the planes and he was riding with the players and he was around the players. And then you see somebody like LeBron who could make that Anthony Davis trade. And
Yeah.
because of Clutch Sports and because of Rich Paul and the fact that Rich Paul, we talked about this 2 weeks ago, he signed this deal with this Hollywood agency and he'll be repping Kevin Hart, Tiffany Haddish, and that's huge because he already has LeBron, John Wall, Ben Simmons. So now learning a week later that the NCAA passes this rule, and this rule, it basically says that the agent must pass an in-person exam taken in November at the NCAA offices in Indianapolis, and they must be certified by the NBA Players Association for at least 3 years, plus they must have a bachelor's degree. And Rich Paul, he doesn't have that. But the fact that he's still effective, most people like Bill Gates, no college degree. And
Some of the players don't have that.
Some of the players. And then
Jay Black said it earlier though. It's
Yeah.
all about the power. Like that nigga's not gonna just give you.
I got
Right.
a question too, though. I got a question too.
Yeah.
Because once these athletes they declare to go to the NBA,
I always
they're
thought
no
that
longer
you can't go
associated
back.
with the NCAA,
I always
right?
thought that too.
You have to sign with the agent
First.
before first. Yeah, and
Right.
then it's a no. I'm saying if you sign with the agent, you can't go back. You know what I'm saying? But if you don't sign with an agent, you can test the water.
see your point, though, Jay Black.
See where you ranking it and whatever, and you can go back if need be by a certain date.
But that goes to
NFL
my
can't
point.
do that. That's what it is. NBA, you can. NBA, you can go to the draft or not go to the draft. You can do the combine, and then if you realize, like what Steve said,
You ain't
oh,
ready.
I'm gonna be like a second round draft pick, then you can bounce out. NFL, you can't do that.
Without signing the agent.
So I guess
Right.
that, because I guess I'm thinking of Zion. Zion, we knew he wasn't going back, or he didn't have to go back.
He didn't have to go to college.
So
Yeah.
him leaving, he know he's not going back to the NCAA. So why does those rules still apply when he's going to get another agent?
And that's what I'm gonna ask Justin too about the control factor, and then also another element. Chris Broussard, I was very impressed when he posted his video saying,
that was great.
and we've been talking about this, me, Jay Black, and Kim for probably about 3 months now. What is it gonna take for us to finally start going back to HBCUs? And why can't we start playing for ourselves? Possibly having football games on BET
It's all
or
together.
Money.
things like that. Like, how do we get back to that point of self-empowerment?
Money,
So-
self-draw.
It's the money.
Like, yeah, they got it in
facilities.
Yeah, because like if
Yeah.
you go on a recruiting visit, say I'm gonna use Ohio State as an example,
It's
and,
huge.
and you got Cleveland State or whatever, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? You see these folks with the private jets, they getting these catered meals, you know what I'm
Jordans.
saying? It's a big, it's all kind of little perks that. I mean, we speak about they need to be getting paid, but it's all certain perks they get.
And
the
they break
top
them off
Division
$1,600 a month too.
top Division
Yeah.
One colleges, you know what I'm saying? So, but it's just a whole like. But as a kid, you like this is what I work for. Like I work to get this type of treatment, or live this type of way, or play this type of way with the private facilities. You know what I'm saying? Like other than going to Morehouse, I can go to Georgia Tech. Like, I'm gonna go to Georgia Tech for the most part. Like.
But Steve, and I would say this, and then Justin, please
Yeah.
dive in like right after this. I just feel like one of my main conflicts with this, because I was an athlete in high school too, and my first years in college, and I had that same sentiment. Like I gotta go to this school Because I remember, like, during the whole recruiting process, somebody hit me up from, like, an HBCU. I'm not picking up the phone. Like, I want to play at a historically white school. Not for real. Hey, because that's just a fact. Because, like, with the football teams, I remember Grambling had a whole thing where they weren't washing the players' jerseys on time. And they
riding buses everywhere they go for the most part. Like,
but what the thing takes is that one person, like a Zion, has to change the narrative. And that one person has to make that sacrifice. Because we can say that these white schools don't really care about us because we got these coaches that don't really care about us. But then they're just using us just to get their money, get their wins in, and then once we're already done, you're just like disposable. I'm done with you.
Is Zion? They control everything, like CBS
Right.
and all this other joints.
Fox,
like, ABC
like, for the Rose Bowl.
All them people in town. Like I was looking at something the other day about a lot of the schools had got in trouble for recruiting violations, right?
I forgot about that.
Nobody really got a ban besides who? Utah. Like why? Because it's not a money draw.
And
like
look,
you know what I'm saying?
When they give like 100,000, it was giving.
It's not a money draw.
Crazy.
Like you know what I'm saying? So we gonna play like they didn't play the game right. They ain't pay who they needed to pay like to play in the big boy leagues. You know what I'm saying? Like these little schools, I don't even want to call them little, but you know what I'm saying? Like funding wise, they don't have that. They can't do it. Yeah, and then like they can decide I don't want to play Morehouse, even if Zion does go to HBCU, they can have that power to say, "Oh, he didn't play the game. We're not finna broadcast this."
Right.
Like,
I think that goes back.
He attracts views.
That goes back to the solution in the whole culture. Like, if their networks isn't paying for it, we need to step up.
There we go.
And
That's
make
it.
our networks bigger. We need to control our narrative. Like we expecting somebody else, CNN, to control our narrative. CNN to tell us what's going on in our neighborhood. CNN to MSNBC. We get mad at Fox because they have people with the narrative that they want to push. We have to control our narrative, and even when it comes to like, again, to them not wanting to show it. Like I think the conversation we had, we was talking about maybe Jay-Z streaming it on Tidal.
Get Jay-Z, Beyonce.
You know, it's going directly through Tidal, like going directly through these black
so
companies.
many avenues.
It's just more about us. You know, we gotta.
But you won't have to make that a hard decision when you love black people. When it comes down to what we were saying before, when you love
somebody got to make that sacrifice. That's what it goes
when
down
you
to.
love black people, when you're
Jonathan ready. I know
you're
you're
even ready,
because Jonathan.
That's what I've been wanting to call on you, man.
Because Jonathan's point too, because I mean, even in the gym, and Steve, like you can comment on it too. I remember we had these same conversations, and I remember one of the things I said last year was I get mad, especially watching players in the SEC and especially Ole Miss, when I see their fight song is Old Dixie Lee. And you see that their mascot is the Rebels. Not just that, you can look on TV.
like Ole Miss.
They have Robert E. Lee on the sidelines as a mascot.
With
the Confederate outfit on, but they got an all-black football team.
Why do y'all watch that?
So my problem is, you can have the facility, you can have all that you want, but I'd rather play at Morehouse and build that up at Clark. So how do we combat that? Steve, tell me what you think. Jonathan, and then Justin, please tell us as well.
So I was piggybacking on when you said Zion brings in a lot of views. They brand alone brings in a lot of views. You know what I'm saying? Like just the ACC, the SEC, like they bring in views.
Wow.
Because of us.
Tradition.
Yeah, because of that talent.
Yeah, we made it pop.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. But even when they ain't have the most talent, like they still was getting views. Like UCLA.
If we leave though, Steve, hey, if LSU had no black players, Georgia, all the black players left, Alabama, all the black players left.
They'll be trash.
That's my point. So who's gonna watch that?
They'll be trash.
They didn't build that over time. You feel me?
Because of us.
That's what I'm saying.
That's why I said we just got
tradition, the brand.
We got bowl games like the Cotton Bowl, the Sugar Bowl. Like we don't think about this stuff.
But Zion could have did all that, but it's still like that change. I don't think when he even came in our lifetime, just because those brands have been built up for so long.
Yeah.
We got to try though.
Right.
So Memphis basketball has the #1 recruiting class this year.
Penny Hardaway.
That is because of one change that happened very quickly. Penny Hardaway hanging out in the AAU circuit and then going to Memphis. It can happen overnight, literally overnight. The bigger issue is less Duke, less Zion, and more of the realization, again, going back to I think we like to make problems so simple, and they're not that simple.
Right.
Like, I'm here and having these conversations because destruction of black civilization was in the, office in my house. Like, I can go and find a book by Dr. Chancellor Williams. Most human beings don't have these experiences. So us expecting Zion to go anywhere but Duke is absolutely unrealistic, because we have to realize who Zion is. We knew Zion was going to be Zion when Zion was this big, because when Zion was this big, he was probably 2 years old. And so, like, we got to understand, like, what these players, their life experiences are. So, like, for instance, Outliers, great book, everybody should read it. Zion, probably an outlier. Probably, I don't know his birthday, but he's probably a little bit older than the kids in his fundamental developing class.
Gotcha.
He's going to be bigger, so he's getting picked first. He's getting sent to camps first. Yeah. He's getting all this exposure before 10 years old. And everybody who's guiding him that way is probably someone who's white. From that moment,
same thing with Shaq.
Same thing, and they're literally going from place to place to place to place.
This ties directly in
until they get to college. So you go on your college visits. Let's say he did let's see a couple other schools. So let's say, and I can't speak so much to basketball, but let's say football. I'm going let's say I'm going to the option of going to UM or Alabama. And I know I might play at UM and I'm not going to play at Alabama. But my life experience is going to be living in a 5-star resort for my entire college career. The food, like, I'm going from not having food to having world-class meals all day. And again, every single thing being carried by a white man or a white woman. From that point on, my life, every time it gets better, is being handed to me by a white person. Wow. So these experiences over time multiply, because every person that's coming behind Zion, hey man, how was your experience like? Oh, well, you go talk to them, you go hang out with that person, you go hang out with this person. By the way, you might want to go ahead and get you a white wife, because that's going to up your stock. And then we complete the cycle. Let's just say 4 years later, the kid that was a freshman that's watching Zion for those 4 years, that is the blueprint, and that is right, because it worked. And like, we look at end result, and then we reverse engineer without any of the real statements, just the statement that makes sense to us. All right, NBA, white wife, Duke,
white agent.
Yeah. All right, bet. Let me go rinse and repeat. And so I think the solution to that is getting more involved at a younger level in sports. Even if your goal isn't necessary to guide these people in the sports realm, but to guide these people in the human realm. Because regardless of what we like, what sports we like, unfortunately for our people, those are going to be the leaders. Right. And essentially fill the brain of the future leader. That kid who's a star DB at park ball, he's probably going to be a star DB in high school, probably going to be a star DB in the league, and so on and so forth.
That's a part of the imagery.
So and it really, the solution is going back to, the solution is always the solution. Ground roots with the children. Talk to me, bro.
I think in our community, especially with a lot of the top athletes, they do come up under black leadership, because I know, like, growing up, a lot of the people we lean to our coaches. Mm-hmm. Our coaches were usually somebody that was in the neighborhood, and we always, no matter Little League football, like, it was a time I could still call my Little League head coach. I'm in high school. Wow. So I don't really think that's the problem. And
were
even,
they successful?
Huh?
Were they successful?
No, they just in the neighborhood.
I know.
Yeah, they just regular neighborhood people.
So they were, and so you're right, but that's essentially, the way that's looked at as a little kid is no different than the way we look at our parents. We don't say thank you every time mom cooks. We don't say thank you every time she walks, because that's her job. And like, not saying it really is. Right. That's what's programmed in our mind. And it's no different. You don't look at that black coach that's been there your whole life the way you look at that SEC coach.
Nick Saban. When you see Nick Saban, it's a different level of respect.
I can't say that though. Yeah, I can't.
I am that black coach.
Yeah,
like,
so you know.
That's a level of success.
Status.
Status. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I get that.
You like, oh shit.
Let me pull up my pants.
Like, even
I get that.
Conversations are different around black coaches and white coaches. Like, it's literally,
and if you're lucky, your white coach is an ally, but if you're not, like the thing that happened with Shaq, when Shaq went to LSU, he was he went there during the time when David Duke was running for,
you're right. I forgot about
I think
that.
senator or governor of Louisiana.
Yeah.
And they asked Shaq one day, he was like, they were like, do you think David Duke should be the governor? And he was like, oh yeah, sure. Who gives a fuck? I don't know who David. So then when his coach came to him, his coach was I don't know a lot about college basketball, but I'm assuming that the coach was a good coach because he actually went in front of the media and was like, yo, don't do that. He doesn't know anything about David Duke. So then when they finally got to Shaq and they were like, well, why'd you say that? Do you know who David Duke is? He was like, I'm from New Jersey. I don't know who David Duke is. Somebody's running for
He didn't even have Google back then.
politics.
So
I don't, I'm just like, yeah, sure, like whatever. So they used that though as a way during that period of time because back then it wasn't like social media like, yo, I didn't know who David Duke was. They used that one soundbite of him saying, yeah, sure, David Duke, to push that.
Wow.
Right.
He was 17.
Back then, let's go last month, literally heard a young black man who is a senior in high school say, I would rather a white man talk to me like that than a black man.
Wow.
Literally last month.
Talk to us. So, like, how do we fix this? Man?
Coaching, being coached by a black man or a white man. And this is literally a black man. I won't even call him a black young man, a black man.
Yeah, because he's old enough.
He's old enough. Look me dead in the face and say, I would rather a white man talk to me like that than a black man. And again, it just goes to
back to everything
that I was stating in terms of where they are and what's aspirational. Because I'm one of them. I don't provide a vehicle for them to get to the next level. I'm just doing my job.
Right. I think it's a mix between psychology and economics, and so we need to start raising our children to view themselves in a powerful way, and not to view white people as being superior. And we need to make a conscious effort of doing that. But at the same time, on the economic side of it, it's not going to be overnight, and because I think we put way too much pressure on these athletes in a way. Like, these are individuals who are trained to do one thing very well.
One thing.
And so we put all this pressure on them saying, okay, well, they need to start a league or they need to do this. These are not businessmen. Right. These are people who are trained to do a specific thing. And so the businessmen in our society need to start stepping up and creating these outlets for it to make sense for them to do it. Because I agree, it's very important for us to make a sacrifice, but to what extent can a person make a sacrifice? And that's, everybody has to make that decision. But if your whole family been struggling, I can't necessarily fault a young man for going in a direction that individually is gonna help his whole entire family be good for the rest of their lives. And so, but we need to train them to have a commitment to their communities, and that needs to be something that's taught to children at an early age. At the same time, I can't demonize somebody that sees an opportunity to change their life situation. So that's my take on it. Teach your children to love themselves, to put their group of people first. At the same time, on the economic side of it, as a people, like, it's gonna take time. And for those people that actually do understand economics, that actually do understand business, to work towards having it so it makes sense to go a different route. On the Rich Paul situation, though, it's really just them monopolizing the entire market and making it to where people from the bottom have a large barrier in order to get in there. And so it's keeping the control to those that have the money and the power. You think about college, getting a bachelor's degree. College is more expensive than it's ever been, and the prices are skyrocketing. Also, you getting certified what's the certification that they need to have?
For the certification, you need to be certified by the NBA Players Association for at least 3 years, and then you must have a bachelor's.
Okay, so then you have to
another hurdle.
Right, it's another hurdle.
Minimum of 3 years.
You have to think that's not going to just be a $150 certification that you're going to need
Right.
for by the NBA Players Association.
Right.
Also, then you have to travel all the way to a specific place.
Yeah, Indianapolis.
To take this exam.
Yeah.
So these are putting up economic barriers
already. I didn't think about that.
A lot of people can't get into, and so that's stopping us as a people from being able to actually capitalize and have ownership of our own talents. So if we're struggling economically as a people, but you got to go to school first, you have to pay all this money just to get a degree to even consider being in a position to step your foot in the door. That's a huge barrier that's going to keep us from being able to actually control ourselves. And then when you think about these basketball teams, majority of the people on the basketball teams look like us.
Yes.
Right. So if you have an agent or a manager that can tell them, okay, this is how you manage your money. You should allocate it to black businesses. Like you should handle it in a way that's not going to be destructive to yourself or destructive to your people. Then that has an impact on those who are in positions of power. So it's very strategically done. And and another thing is, when it comes to the baseball teams and hockey, they don't have to abide by those same rules. So
they don't even have cap space, really. Like there's no cap for baseball, I don't think.
I'm not sure.
As well, yeah, yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
So I mean, so if you look at it from that angle, that's just it's a racist policy, point blank.
Right, yeah.
If the hockey team and the baseball team doesn't have to abide by this same policy, but all these black athletes
got to take a pay cut,
have to abide by this policy, it's a racist thing.
Yeah.
So before we wrap it up, we want to touch on a topic that I kind of addressed earlier, but the mass shootings. Me personally, like I said before, I think that it's just it's because most of them are done by young white men. They fit a certain profile, right? The president is blaming it
socially
on
awkward too.
Mental illness. He's blaming it on video games. He's blaming it on everything but white supremacy and their agenda. Do you think that if we have stricter gun laws, it's going to change anything, or do you think that it's like, the whole mentality is going to have to change?
No, I mean, stricter gun laws isn't going to change anything.
Right.
I have countless knives in my kitchen. I've never stabbed anybody.
Wow,
so
that's great. Yeah.
It's not about the gun laws. If people are basically, matter of fact, if you're going to make tougher gun laws, then it's not as if mass shootings are legal. So that is not gonna have a huge impact on the situation. We have a problem with white supremacy. We have a problem with white men specifically feeling that their power is being threatened and not knowing how to handle that. So
because being held accountable wasn't ever promised to them in the white supremacist agenda. They left out the part where
inside of the handbook,
right? In the white supremacist handbook, they left out the chapter that says you are going to be held accountable for anything that you've done wrong. Because for people like Epstein, for example, you've gone years and years and years finessing, or if you are Billy Bob in Podunk, Arkansas, and people have told you that the reason why they closed the coal mines is because the brown and the Mexicans and the black people have taken all those, the dream that they sell you, it doesn't add up, so it gets frustrating and infuriating, and then they do all this stuff, and they have now somebody there that kind of like eggs them on. Like I said, it fits into that, and not to mention the fact that if he gets reelected, if he doesn't get reelected, he go to jail. So he's got to keep pushing them and pushing them and pushing them, and make them think that it's pretty cool what they're doing, and egg them on, and stuff like that. But what do you think, Caleb?
It's tough. I mean, I just get frustrated because I remember it was the clip that we saw on CNN. It was a college professor, and you remember it was the black guy. He was very intelligent. But what he was saying was
awesome.
Excuse me, the same sentiment that I've been feeling for ever since this has really started jumping up even more, is that I don't know why people are so surprised.
Yeah,
like, this is America.
This is who we are.
Yeah.
Like this is truly American history. White men especially have always come in and murdered and raped and pillaged. And the fact that people are acting surprised that this is still going on, or that when it does happen, like this is just a misnomer, or this is just one of these outliers, but this is actually happening like an everyday thing. I think America, I saw The Great Hack, and they were talking about, even with mass shootings, that we're like 10 to 20 times more than the second closest country.
Right.
So why do you think it's so difficult, and even for black people sometimes, to actually wake up to the point that this has always been the country that we lived in, like Birmingham bombings, Black Wall Street here in Atlanta as well, with the race riots in the early 1900s?
America doesn't address its bullshit.
Right.
That's a bar.
And that's basically what it is. America just tries to keep sweeping everything under the rug and then act surprised when the stuff reoccurs.
Right.
And so in one of Malcolm X's speeches, he talks about riots, and he was saying that the upcoming year, and I believe it was the year that he was assassinated, but he was saying the upcoming year was going to be the most violent year that we've ever seen. Wow. And he was saying it has to be. There's no other way for it not to be. He said because just like a bomb, the same chemicals that caused the first explosion are still present.
Yeah.
So it's unavoidable for there to be other explosions.
But isn't it strange to you that? And I saw your video about black identity extremists.
Oh, I didn't think about that with the FBI.
Is it not like not to just you, but to everybody? Like, isn't it really weird to you how we're the black identity extremists, but we have suffered hundreds of years of generational, Jim Crow and slavery, and we're not the ones.
And I don't even call that extreme. I just think that's human nature to self-protect.
Yeah. So
tell the truth.
Now I want to dive into this.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so the government feels that I guess black identity extremists are the biggest threat to this power structure and system that we have in America.
Not mass shooters, right?
Not mass shooters.
The power structure.
Sure.
So I would say they're right. I feel that they're right because one, we understand white supremacy on a level higher than any other group in this country. We understand it so much that most of us think like white men instead of black men.
Yeah. Wow.
So we understand it. But if you look historically, every time black people begin to rise in the country, other minority groups or other groups of color, they begin to rise too. Because they follow our tactics and they learn from us and they see how we lead. That's one of the reasons that the Black Panther Party had to be dismantled so quickly is because it was it started becoming a multicultural organization, and there were many groups that were following behind, even if they didn't consider themselves to be Black Panthers. It was you had Asians and you had Latino groups, and they're looking up to the Black Panthers like, okay, what's the direction? Tell us what way to go. And so they were really about to overturn the system, and so that's why there's such an emphasis on making sure that black people aren't in a position of power and trying to make sure that we don't rise up because they understand the influence that we have.
Right.
Wow,
yeah. So that's where all the other stuff comes from, basically. I mean, everything that we talked about today can basically be summed up that way. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I want people to understand is that you're not excluded. And so we're here to turn black identity extremists, and we'll be like, okay, I'm gonna just chill back because that doesn't apply to me. But we've been stereotyped as a group of people that are violent.
No.
So
were the Black Panthers. So
right?
is Louis Farrakhan. So is anyone that
try to call
tries
you anti-Semitic
to
and things like that. Yep.
So they've labeled us as being violent criminals. And so when you label an entire race of people as being violent criminals, basically that entire group of people fall into that category of being black identity extremists. So
it's all
justifying killing that person, right?
Right, but understand that you may not necessarily consider yourself to be an activist. Black men being shot in the street don't consider themselves to be activists, right. But the way that we're viewed as a threat. And so understand that struggle applies to you as well.
Wow. I learned so much today. How about yourself, Kim? You enjoyed that?
Yes, of course.
Amazing.
Feel free to come back anytime
yes.
that you want. Tell people how to follow you.
All right, so you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, JustinBLU_. Also, you can go to justinblu.com, which I highly recommend. Go to justinblu.com to just stay intact with everything, and also sign up to the email subscriber list because there's so many documents and PDFs and a lot of stuff that I'm giving out with that. And
what's next for you? What are you doing next?
Okay, so working on a train energy tour right now, and so we're gonna be going to different cities.
Nice.
And my whole thing is reminding black people of their greatness, but also giving tools so that we can hone in on that. So that's what I'm all about, and I'm just really getting into entrepreneurship full time as well, because I want us to see that you can really just come from a background and a lineage of not being not having entrepreneurs and not having ownership and coming off the ground and really building that. So that's the journey that I'm on.
Beautiful.
And I'm taking everybody with me.
Beautiful,
Yes.
man. Beautiful.
So like I said, do you live in Florida still, or are you here in Atlanta?
I'm in Atlanta, so
Yeah.
I've been in Atlanta for about 2 years.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, me too.
And you went to state, right? For
Yeah.
masters?
I'm
that's
actually
dope.
I'm wrapping up my masters. I'm almost done. So
Okay, fellow
Congratulations.
Panther, man, congrats to you. That's huge, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like, way ahead of your time, bro. We appreciate you. Representation is so important. So seeing you on the big screen, speaking facts, that was a really big thing for us. So keep doing what you're doing. We love it. And it's only the beginning. I mean, you're
Now
only
you're a
20.
yeah,
friend
we
of the
just
show,
getting
so
started.
you can fall
Yeah.
in and keep us updated on what you've been doing.
for sure.
Gotcha.
Anytime you have
Yes.
the open door policy,
Yes.
and just keep doing what you're doing.
Yes.
Hey, y'all keep doing what y'all doing.
Thank you, man. We
It's
appreciate
necessary.
you, King. Thank you. Thank
Appreciate you.
Yes. And,
So we will see you guys next week
oh, and wait, Kim, everybody, they need to follow you so we can get them updates on the page all the time.
on Connecting the Dots.
And your page as well. You know, you be
Okay.
posting everything.
Jay Black, you have a live thing, right? That you wanted to talk about. You told me to mention something about the live thing. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, follow us
Kim
on
telling the
CTD, right? Follow us on CTD_ATL. You can follow me, Chocolate GRL Wonder. You can follow
Me at Monta Solomon as well.
Minda Solomon.
Yeah.
And also we're on Facebook,
Yeah.
Connecting the Dots. So also on any platform where you listen to podcasts, you don't have to be on YouTube looking at us all the time. You can just listen.
Right.
And we will see you guys next week.
Yeah. Subscribe to the channel too. Thank you for listening.